Welcome back to the Rise and War podcast, everybody. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Amy Oberg. And Amy, you go by Dr. AO. Is that correct?
That is correct. At least I'm known in my parts as Dr. AO.
AO. Okay, so we'll call out Dr. AO. So tell me again where you're located.
Sure. So I'm in Kingman, Arizona, a small town that sits right in between Phoenix and Las Vegas. And
Okay.
we're just kind of a small little community, but we're growing for sure.
This podcast is primarily we interview musical artists, bands that are in what I would call an alternative music scene in Christian music, kind of the fringes of the CCM scene. And I usually say, if you want to be on the podcast, you've got to be a musician, you've got to be an artist, but you are that because you're a worship leader.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the church where you help pastor.
Sure. So I didn't pick up a guitar till I was 19. I'm mostly self-taught. I'm a Gen Xer, and so I was raised in all the rage music. But really, my heart was really for worship music, and so I learned how to accompany myself with a guitar. So I do play guitar, mostly rhythm. So I'm no lead or anything, but I do consider my first instrument as my voice, and I've spent a lot of time leading worship, not so much in the music scene, but the worship scene. And I think that is a little bit different than Christian music, but I pastor at a church. I'm the life pastor, so I try really hard to bring life to everything at our church. But I'm also the worship leader there, and I take care of most of our musicians and try really hard. And I think that I am a little bit unique in the fact that I'm also a psychologist, and so I'm a pastoring psychologist worship leader. I think that's a tall order right there. But
That's a very cool title.
so lots of different roles, but I really value the heart of worship for sure. I think that it's really, really powerful, and I think it can bring a lot of hope to people.
That's so cool, and I appreciate you sharing. Dr. AO, you and I met, I guess, maybe about a year ago at a national conference for the American Association of Christian Counselors. And so we've kind of stayed in touch over this past year. I've really enjoyed your work, followed what you're doing, and believe that you're making a significant impact, not just in the kingdom, but in the world of psychology. And so that's why I've asked you to join me today, because this month we're kind of doing something a little bit different on the Rise and Roar podcast. We're going to be talking not necessarily to bands and artists about their music, but more about topics and issues that I feel like need to have a higher awareness within our community. And one of those, which is very near and dear to my heart, as you know, is psychology and mental health. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase, not quote verbatim, but just a few years ago, we had a vice president for the American Psychological Association stand before Congress, and I don't know if you remember this speech, but he said, we are no longer in a mental health crisis. We're experiencing a mental health catastrophe. And I don't know if you remember that or if you agree with that, but can you speak to that? Do you feel like that's where we are in our nation, in the world, that we're actually in not just an epidemic, but we're experiencing a catastrophe out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's an epidemic, honestly, in the mental health world. I think that we say the words mental health, but I think what we're really talking about is mental illness. And
Mm.
why is it so much on the rise? Why is it such an issue? Why is it such a struggle? Why are we in a mental health crisis? And, I think there's a lot of theories to that. My personal theory is that the advances in digital technology, the pace of our planet has sped up so much that I think a lot of our bodies live in fight or flight mode. I think that a lot of our brains live in this space where we are constantly going. And truthfully, our world glorifies success. And so it's never enough. Uh, Instantaneous is not fast enough. And so we live on the edge of what our bodies can actually handle. And if we don't address some of those things, such as, First Thessalonians says that we are mind, body, and spirit. And I think that we have to have solutions for each one of those things. I think that we can't over spiritualize everything, but we actually have to look at the pace of our life, the pace of our minds, the pace of our souls, and learn how to keep deep conviction really heavy, but also understand that we can't just do anything to our body and accept that that's going to work well. It's just not. You can't drink 4 monsters a day and expect that your body is going to function good, right? You can't watch 6, 7 hours of digital technology and scrolling and doom scrolling if you really believe that your body should just handle that and our brains handle that, and it just doesn't work. So I think that digital technology is a really big factor. The pace of our world is a big factor. And then I also believe that we lack some relationship skills. And I think that connection has been lost in information, where we have more information that we could possibly ever imagine. And we're the sickest people.
Hmm.
And so we have very few applicable things, practical tools to utilize in our world because we are swimming in information all the time. And so those would be my top 3. And I do think it's a catastrophe for sure. I think that it's an epidemic that we really have to address because I think that it's getting worse.
You know, and I completely agree with you. And I believe personally, and part of my work in the area of not just theology, but psychology, is that as Christians, we've been given the answer. And I'm not always sure that we're stewarding that answer well. I don't know, what would you say to that?
That's so good. I think that so many people look for inner peace. I just want inner peace. And I have told many people that inner peace doesn't exist. When
Mm,
we are living on as a human on this planet, inner peace doesn't exist. But stewarding the right answer would be, but you can have eternal security, and that will actually give you the peace you desire.
mm, that's good. That's really good. You made a statement just a few minutes ago when you were talking about things that you see a part of this mental illness catastrophe that we're facing. You said we value success. We're almost sick with success, if I can reword that a little bit. We want to be successful as humans, right? I mean, that's just part of who we are, but are we measuring success the wrong way? And if we are, what metrics should we be thinking about? How should we measure success in life and somehow heal and recover at the same time?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I think we have to make sure that we're pleasing the right person. There's only one person that we're supposed to be pleasing, and that's God, right? But
Mm,
I also believe that instead of massive amounts of success, I think that excellence would be beneficial and presence would be beneficial. So, I think that we all have to do a lot of things. And I said I have all these roles and everything. And honestly, the goal is to be present in the one thing so I can do that one thing with excellence while I'm doing that one thing. And we do have this celebrity style glorification of success. And everyone is like, I just want to be that influencer, or I just want to be this. If I just sold 1 million records, then then I would be good. Or if I just had a number one hit, or if I just wrote that song that, Chris Tomlin would sing, like whatever. It's like this, if I could just, and the moment we even hit that is the moment we raise the bar. And I have found that my own life, we never win that expectation war against ourselves. And so we
Mm,
have to learn how to claim victory in who God is. And we have to learn how to claim victory in being present. We have to learn how to claim victory in having excellence in our life. And I think that that is one solution to slow down, because if we were 100% present, then we could have excellence in the things that we're doing as we please God the Father.
that is so good, and you said something I think that is key, that we're in a war with ourselves.
Mm,
And a lot of times we tend to come from the perspective as Christians that Paul says we're not at war with flesh and blood, right? But we're in the midst of a spiritual war. But I think a lot of times we externalize that. And even when we say we're not at war with flesh and blood, we think that's outside, but that can be inside too, right?
for sure. Yeah. I think most of the barriers that we come up against, even in our own mental health, we all have to face our mind, our body, and our soul. But I'm my worst critic. I am a self-sabotager, and I will get in my own way and not follow my convictions. Like it seems silly, but I have to learn how to manage that in a way that is very healthy. And going back to my last statement of bringing my presence, being present with God, knowing what He wants from me, and bringing excellence means that I'm bringing a very thorough point of view to whatever it is that I'm doing.
That's good. Yeah, well, I can attest to this, Dr. Ao. You are fully present wherever you are. Um, I experienced this at the conference when we first met you. Holly, my wife, and I remember very distinctly when we met you. It was immediately, we were best friends forever, right? I mean, you were just there. It was like, I've been having this conversation with you since like 1988. It's what I felt like. So, and I think that's important, that we have to come back to the relational connection, that we have to connect as humans no matter what we're facing. And that's how God's created us, right? Relational connections are important.
Yeah. I've tried really, really hard. I was just talking to somebody about this because I was talking to someone at church, and I rarely allow people to interrupt me because I try really hard to just spend the moment. I mean, what is it? 4 minutes with someone, barely, but it's like,
Mm,
hey, can I just be present and, give somebody the attention that they deserve instead of flitting off here and there, and, and I do find myself doing that. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not perfect in this area, but I want to love God's people the way that God loves them. And I believe that He is a present God. And I think that He's done that with me. I think that's His desire, to be present with us. And sin messed that up in the basic form of separation from God. And so the whole redemption process is to be present with Him and to be in relationship with Him.
that's good. Thank you for saying it that way. It's so good to hear. Um, Part of this epidemic that we're facing has resulted in just extreme isolation. And I believe, and I think you would agree, that the pandemic, you know, uh, 2019, 2020, 2021, that era, um, helped kind of exacerbate the isolationism that we're experiencing, and its increased loneliness among so many across every generation, really. Um, you mentioned earlier about practical tools, that we don't have practical tools when we're looking at being lonely, when we're looking at kind of the war internally about the success issues and all that kind of stuff, and our own mental health or mental illness, what are some practical tools that you use or that you coach or counsel people to use to kind of, and the picture I get in this is that people are treading water and they're not able to get their nose up above the water level as it continues to rise. It's like we're drowning, we're suffocating. What are some of the practical tools that we can use and employ to help us in this situation?
So, uh, just as a comment, I really believe that in 2020, when everything shut down, that we hit the ceiling of social media's definition. Social media
Mm,
is way more information than it is connection. And so I think what we saw when 2020 hit was we hit the ceiling that social media, it was not social at all.
mhm,
And so not only does it's very divisive and it's very opinionated and all that, but it's not social. It's not social at all. And so we hit that ceiling and everybody realized that they're really not connected.
mhm,
And so what happened is you're right, it exacerbated a problem that we see where now you can be in a crowd of people and be extremely lonely and isolated because we don't even see people anymore. We are constantly looking at our phones over and over and over again and not being present in a simple human way. I mean, I feel like it's so inhumane to stand in a line where you're with a bunch of people and no one talks to each other. And then
mhm,
we see people in sitting down to eat dinner at a restaurant, a sit down restaurant, and everybody is on their phones. They're not even engaging. And so the skills and the practical skills that I would say are very simple. Um, so I teach at a school 2 days a week, and I'm the mental health director there. And last year, I brought in a very simple process for teaching mental health because it's K through 12, and but the problem is that they lack so many skills to even communicate because everything is online that I I put into practice one word for an entire month,
mhm,
and the word was kind. And I taught them for 3 weeks what kindness was, and it was incredible to see these kids come alive because we sit in these big groups, and I'm like, "Hey, kindness starts with you. You don't wait for somebody else to be kind, right? We have to start it within ourselves." And so it is rarely reciprocated. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with reciprocation at this point. We're just starting with one source, which is ourselves. And that's all we can do is start with ourselves. But the exercise that I did with them was to be kind and to practice kindness. We ended up having the kids battle. You have to stare into each other's eyes for 5 seconds and smile at the same time. Now, 5 seconds is a long time, considering that most people, when you walk past somebody in a grocery store, you're like, and most people don't, they're like this, or they're like this, right?
yeah.
So um, it was so awkward in the room that I was like, okay, well, I'll do it. Come on. So the whole room started counting, and we've got me and like a 14-year-old boy staring at each other and smiling. So what it did was it allowed them to be awkward. And I hate saying it that way, but it's true. It allowed them to be awkward in a way that they have never experienced relational, and I would say relational skills at all, life skills of kindness. And by the end of the exercise, it was like a 30-40 minute class. They were calling out the kids that were beefing with each other because they wanted them to stare at each other for 5 seconds while they all counted and rooted them on. And I feel like as one practical skill, when we look at loneliness and we look at this epidemic of like mental crisis and we look at isolation so often, one of the solutions that we have starts with us. And that's hard
Mm.
because we want it to start with other people and we want everybody else to change. But that's not the solution. The solution is that kindness starts with us. And so we have to learn how to change part of our own loneliness to be able to connect with people. And that is going to start legitimately with 5 seconds of staring at someone and being super weird and awkward and being able to say, "Hey, how are you? Would you like to go to lunch? Would you like to go to coffee? Would you like to exchange phone numbers? I would like to have friends in my life." And the truth is that that is a very awkward, uncomfortable place to be in. But our world desperately needs people to come out and say, "Hey, I need friends in my life." And then willing, I mean, honestly, you'll probably go through 20, 30, maybe 40 friends before you find one that you really click with. And we
Mm.
have to be willing to be a part of the solution for ourselves. And if one of the solutions is, "Hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store instead of pick up a click list," then that's one of the solutions. If I'm going to meet 5 people today and I'm just going to say hello and I'm going to wave and that extra time to smile, it literally is going to start with us being the solution and it accepting that it's going to be probably pretty weird at the beginning.
Definitely, definitely weird. But I think the world needs weird
Yeah,
right now. It really is unnatural. I've read a study not long ago, and I can't remember which one. I have to look it up to cite it, but it talked about the attention span of humans right now has diminished down to, I believe the study said, 6 or 7 seconds. And a lot of that being because of, our constant scrolling on social media. And it gave context that I think the goldfish attention span is 5 seconds. So we're closing in on an attention span of a goldfish because of the pace and the franticness and the isolation and the things that we're consuming. And here you're saying, I'm doing an exercise with teenagers, just asking them to stare at each other for 5 seconds. And it is bizarre to watch people squirm and almost run from that, right?
yeah. It is. I think that you're right. That 5 or 6 seconds or 6 or 7 seconds, whatever that is, that that can be the change. That's how, as much as we look at 5 or 6, 7 seconds, it's like that could actually be the change that we need. 5 or 6 seconds of what would happen if we did that? What would happen if we taught that? What would happen if what relationships would be birthed out of that so that we could create more connections?
Hmm. You know, years ago, I came face to face with PTSD and complex anxiety in my own life. And I spent a number of years with a therapist, with a counselor, working through that to get help and healing. And I don't mind talking about it because I think people need to hear that it's okay that if you're in one place, but let's get some help to get you to the next place, right?
Correct.
Um, but in that, when I was coming out of that situation, um, in the thick of it, one thing I realized in trying to have conversations with people again on a regular basis, people were talking so fast. They were interrupting themselves just trying to get their sentence out, and it was in fragmented sentences. And a lot of that is because of our text messaging and our messaging on apps and everything else. But I deliberately said, you know what? I'm going to be the weird one in the world, but I'm going to slow down my speaking. Right? And what I noticed, and I've talked to people about this, they think I talk slow just in a normal conversation. But what I found is that even in not just messaging, but watching videos online or something, they'll speed up the video so they get through it faster. So now they're trying to talk that fast and they're talking over themselves and they can't, and it's just like, and they try to they have to take a breath just to get through a sentence. And I said, I'm going to deliberately slow down my speech. And what I have found over time with people that I have more and more conversations with, that when I do that, they slow down as well. And we get back into almost what I would call a human rhythm of having a conversation. And it is awkward, just like you said, looking at somebody for 5 seconds or slowing down your speech. Does that make sense to you? Does that seem like a pretty good tool to try to employ as well?
Yeah. One of the reasons we're seeing some of that like fragmentation is a lot of people don't realize what happens, and we call it doom scrolling, right? And so
Hmm.
we have our phones and we swipe, 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 and it's massive amounts of overstimulation in the brain. And so if you've ever seen a brain scan while someone was actually scrolling, what it does is it covers the whole head, and it lights up the entire brain. And so what
Wow.
happens is cognitive processing goes away. It's like numb, like a brain freeze, because
Right.
everything is just like, it's just getting all of that, trying to manage all that information. And then the moment, and we see with our kids and with people, they put their phones down, and what happens is everything starts to go back to that normal rhythm that you're talking about, but cognitive processing has slowed down. And so most people don't like that because they actually have to think about what they feel. They have to think about
Mm.
what someone else is saying. They have to look at other people and comprehend what is going on. What are the concepts? What are the themes? What's happening? And so we find that people would prefer the numbing of the brain over and over and over again so that they don't have to think. So by the time you have a conversation with someone, their brain is not comprehending some of those things because some of those processes have been halted and stunted, and they don't even use that circuitry anymore.
Mm.
So that's where some of that fragmentation actually comes from.
So, what I hear you saying to me is that this road to healing or overcoming difficulties with mental illness or even just everyday anxiety, depression, things like that, this is not a complex thing that we have to put together. We can take simple steps. We can do simple things. Am I hearing correctly?
Yeah, I really do. I think like I said at the beginning that we are we are mind, body, and we are spirit. That's what the Bible says. And so the
Mm.
mind has mind problems and needs mind solution. The body actually has body problems and needs body solution. And the soul actually has problems. We have conviction, value, purpose. We have all of these soul problems that we have, and they need soul solutions. Those three areas are all working together as one human being. But most of the time, we just go, well, I'm just going to work out and everything's going to get better. And it's like, well, that actually doesn't work. And then, well, I'm only going to go to therapy and I'm not going to fix my behavior problems that I'm going against my own soul. And so it doesn't actually work. And so we have
Mm.
to be able to go, I've got some mind problems. I've got some negative thinking. I've got history. I've got experience. I have some thoughts that really need to be challenged. And then I have some body issues where my body is dysregulated and it's overcompensating. And then I'm not giving it the right thing. I'm not giving it stability. And then we have spiritual issues where we behave differently than we believe, and that creates a disruption for the other two, the way that we think and the way that our body behaves. And so we have to actually take those three things. And that maybe sounded more complex than the simple answer of smiling at someone. But the truth is that the brain body connection is pretty basic. And we do have to legitimately slow down and begin to think about each one of those areas and what do I need in each one of those areas if we are going to address mental health. And if we are going to
Mm.
build a life of stability, then we have to address those things independently. And the truth is that I really do need to renew my mind and make it obedient to Christ. The truth is that I do have to take care of my body because I'm going to have anxiety if I drink caffeinated beverages all day long. And if I don't sleep, then I am not going to have cognitive processing in the way that is going to be very healthy for my life. And the truth is that if I don't insert myself in a relationship with Jesus where I am present with him and I am listening and I have the Holy Spirit and I have good community and I have all of these things that teach my soul, then we don't, we have a mess. We have a
Mm.
humanity crisis. And that is creating a lot of mental illness.
So, you said, well, it may sound more complex. We are complex beings, right? That's for sure. There's a lot going on inside of us at every level. But I think the way you're breaking it down, maybe I have a mind problem, maybe I have a body problem, maybe I have a soul problem. I would say step back, maybe even write those three words on a
Mm,
piece of paper and say, what am I dealing with in each one of these domains? And I wouldn't even try to say, hey, here's all the things I'm going to do to fix it. I would say go get some help. Go talk to a coach. Go talk to a friend. Go talk to a pastor. Go talk to a counselor. And bite size, right?
correct.
Little bit at a time. You're not going to fix everything by the end of the month.
Correct.
So I think taking that complexity, breaking it down like you have, and then further saying, where do I start? And let me just start there and do that well. And then you build, and over time you find, what we call um, in research the cumulative effect
Mm.
of all of those little pieces coming together. Would you agree with that? Is that a good starting point for somebody to be able to say, let me start small and build on that in each of these areas?
Absolutely. I think that we need a team of people. I think every person needs a team of people. I need somebody in my life who's spiritually challenging. This is where loneliness is such a factor, but I personally have lots of people in my life that are people that I will go to. So if I need a nutritionist or I have to address something in my body, I need to go get help for that. I need a counselor in my life to help me challenge some of the thought processes that I have. I also need a pastor in my life. I need a spiritual director. I need somebody helping me form that. And I think that one of the best pieces of advice that I used, Atomic Habits is such a great book, but he says
Mm.
just 1% every day. It's not like you can't fix all of
Yeah.
it. So if you could just do 1% every single day, in 1 year, you will have accumulated 365% change in your life. So it's not about fixing it all. It's about, hey, do I have the ability to change 1% and look at one thing? Like, I always start with some of the basic things, which is water, protein, sleep, rest, and exercise. Because if somebody doesn't sleep, I can't have a cognitive conversation with them. It's just
Mhm.
it's not gonna go well. And so I always start with like, hey, let's just put some stability in and give some body stability, and we can remove any of the barriers that happen in our lives. If I need to get rid of caffeine because of anxiety, or if I need to get rid of substance in my life, or if I need to get rid of addictions, then we take those things and we get help for them and we remove them and we create that 1% every single day as we move forward. And I know a lot of people think that we have to change it all. And the truth is that we don't. We really just need to increase 1% every single day.
That's so good. Say that again. You said water,
Oh, water,
your
protein.
basics.
Yeah, water, protein, sleep, rest, and exercise. I feel like those are the 5 things that people have the biggest barriers in. And so we don't drink enough water. We don't get enough protein, maybe 1 gram of protein per body weight. Sleep, we need 8 hours. If you're in grief or something is going on, you need more. We are an over digitized brain, so we need more
Mm.
sleep. Rest is actually for the brain, where sleep is for the body. And exercise, I always tell people to exercise 90 minutes in every week. And it's strength training, because strength training actually gives us a natural antidepressant that allows us to be successful throughout the week for just 3 times a week, 30 minutes. So water, protein, sleep, rest, and exercise.
You need to come up with something mnemonic or something that people can remember. Write a song. Write a worship song about that's such good advice. And so let me ask you this, because everything that you're saying is really really good, but is there a differentiation when you're talking, and I know you and your husband work a lot together in this domain of helping people, but is there a difference when you're dealing with men versus women? Is there anything that we need to be considerate of there?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, yes, men and women definitely are different. But I have found that men have a different filter than women. So, um, most women have a filter and the fear of abandonment. And I'm not talking about like abandonment, like you're going to leave me, which is true, but abandonment to everything. So if you abandon me to do the dishes by myself, I might be mad about it. You might abandon
Mm,
me to do all of the house chores by myself. You might abandon me to didn't include me in a conversation. And so there's this natural fear. I actually think that that fear and that filter is straight from Eden. I think that that's like the filter. I think that Eve was abandoned in the decision making process, and I think that that has just carried through. So when I talk
mm,
to men and women together, I actually think that we have to acknowledge that no one gave us abandonment. It was built into my DNA. I was just born with it. And so when dealing with women very specifically, I try really hard to hold their heart very carefully when I think about the definition, the big umbrella definition of abandonment. And so we have to just be careful that we don't feed that. And we understand that it isn't just our circumstances. I'm sure lots of circumstances have reinforced that. However, that's something that's built in, and so that only God can fill. And for men, when I deal with men, I think that their biggest fear filter is failure. And so when it comes time, most men, they end up saying, I'm just a failure. And not a failure in something that they've done, which is true, but the bigger thing, like if I have something that I need to say, they feel like a failure as a man, or a failure as a father, or a failure as somebody who's, I didn't do it right and the boss needed him. And it's this constant filter over and over and over again that has created a lot of mental health drama, because we as humans have a tendency to blame everyone else for abandonment and failure. So
mm.
what happens is,
Wow.
as we look at male and female, I am very aware that I have to be careful and hold that man's heart careful in the area of failure, because it's built into his DNA. And I think that that is what happened in the garden. And so he failed, and it cost them a lot. And Eve was abandoned, and so they got kicked out of their life. It's separated. And I believe that those two things are things that I run up against all the time, which are reinforced by our culture, and they're reinforced by our histories and our families and all these things. And so by the time somebody gets into my office, I'm like, hey, um, that person actually didn't abandon you. You have that built in. Or I know that your fear or your filter is, failure, but no one gave that to you. That was built in as part of the
Mm,
curse. And so I come up against that a lot, where I'm just careful in the differences between men and women. And I don't want to say it as a generalized statement that this is every man and every woman, because I think we could suffer from all of those things. But that's, at least in my experience, what I've seen.
Those are significant things to grasp. Um, Not just from a counseling perspective or a psychological perspective, but from an interconnectedness perspective,
Yeah.
right? Our relational understanding of one another. It'd be helped to apply those in that capacity. And, you talked about going back to Eden. Um, we started off this conversation by saying, as Christians, we have been given an answer in Christ to steward. And are we doing that well? Do you feel like, and I know you do, but I want you to speak to this. Do you feel like faith is an important component in healing? And how does that come across? How do we apply that to the area of mental health, mental illness, healing, and everything? How do we integrate that?
I don't think it can't. I don't think that there's a possibility of us getting well without integrating the spirit and the soul,
Hmm.
because every single human is every soul is God's imagination, and they are built to reflect him in a
Wow.
different way. So when we look at other humans, they have something to offer that I can't. And so as we learn how to deal with people, we have to learn how to be like, hey, this person matters because they matter to God. And it is the gospel that pierces mental health, I believe, because it is the connection, it is the association, it is the peace, the presence, all of that stuff that connects us to the very thing that we were separated from in the garden.
Hmm.
And so most people that are, and I use this lightly, but most people who don't know Jesus or are lost, they don't know what they're missing. And so that faith factor is massive, because that's the connection and what their soul is actually desiring.
Yeah. So, and just like you were saying earlier, to not have that component would be just like not having the mind component or the body component. It's going to break down. It's not going to be holistic, if you want to use that word, in the process of healing. And for those who may be listening who would say, well, you both are Christians, so of course you're going to say that kind of stuff. Can I say that the research has borne this out as well? And I'm not talking about Christian research or Christians who have done research. I'm talking about there is a wide body of research that has said this component of our lives is important to address as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Okay. So this is such a cool factor. It's one of the reasons I got into psychology. But psychology is actually the study of the soul.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so
I'm glad you said that.
So if we were to actually look at that and understand that it was birthed out of philosophy, but what most of the philosophers couldn't put their finger on was the study of the soul, because everybody was so different. And
Mhm.
so when I think about psychology, you can't not talk about the soul. And so regardless if you're a Christian or not, you have a soul. Most people will agree with that. And if you have a soul, then what do you believe?
Mhm.
And that is part of where, at least because I counsel non-Christians all the time, and it's great. But the truth is that your soul makes up what you believe and your convictions and how you live your life. And so I live my life under God. And so you can't ignore the soul, even if you're not a Christian, because that's what you believe and that's what you have to adhere to in your own convictions. And so it leads to a big question, obviously, which is, what do you believe? But that is for somebody to answer for themselves. And so while you and I might be having a Christian conversation and I talk about that, psychology, birthed out of philosophy, is the study of the soul, because it's the one thing that they could not figure out. So they had
Yeah.
to learn how to study the soul. And obviously there's lots of psychologists and philosophers who are like, well, it's the mind, well, it's the brain, well, it's the body, well, it's what you ate for dinner the night before. I mean, like, there was lots of theories out there, but psychology is truly the study of the soul, and we all need that. Part of our mental health journey is mind, body, is soul.
Very much so, and I appreciate you talking about that and defining that so well. Um, as always, Dr. Ao, I just want to talk to you forever, and I can't wait till the next time I see you and get to have another conversation. And if you're listening, you know why now, because Dr. Ao, you've got so many good things to say, and not just because they sound good, but because they are truly meaningful and helpful in this epidemic, this catastrophe of mental illness that we're experiencing on a global scale. That being said, we can still stay in touch with you. You are not just somebody that's out there in Arizona. Is it Arizona?
It is, yeah.
Arizona. But you have an online, tell me if I'm saying this correct, the Hope and Health Hub that you've
Hmm.
started online. You have some books, you have some on-demand resources on your social media links. I mean, daily, I'm seeing stuff come from you that is just helpful to integrate and apply. Tell us more about that. Where can we find you? What kind of resources do you have available? What would you point us to?
Amazing. So I do own a mental health coaching counseling practice called Hope and Health Hub. Our website is amyoberg.com. Make it as easy as possible for everybody to find. There are some online workshops there. And obviously we do counseling. But I also have a series of books. So the Cloud Tool is a series of books that I have written for mental health, and they are workbooks. So part of my lane is how to communicate the amount of information so that somebody can begin the healing process and maybe take some of those books right into a counselor and be like, hey, this is what I have on my emotional shelf. Can you help me figure that out? Or study it with a group of people. And my most recent book is called Grow Anyway, looking at some of our core human struggles, stuff like truth and justice. And,
Hmm.
we have to deal with those things as a human. So that book has come out this year. And the next book that I have coming out is called Wrestling Rejection, because I think that we have all been rejected. We don't use that term. We say things like, well, we just decided to go a different direction. And I'm like, no, man, I was rejected. Like,
Mhm.
I've been rejected. And so how do I even deal with that? So that's my next book coming out. I'm really hoping to be done by the end of the year with that one. But amyoberg.com is the best way to communicate with me. And of course, on Instagram, Dr. Amy Oberg, and Facebook. And we do put out a lot of content, just kind of integrating those lines between faith and mental health. And so that's how you can get a hold of me.
Very exciting. And we will put all of those links in our show notes so that people can just click right through and get in touch. I would encourage everybody out there to click on those links, go visit Dr. Ao and see what she's got available. Really do have some helpful resources. And I know a lot of people put a lot of stuff out there, but you're doing a significant work, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Ao. Have a great day, and we'll see everybody back here soon for the next episode of the Rise and Roar podcast.